Hey, what's up, LI Retro fans and retro gamers all out there? My name is Mike Staub, and I am your host for the Long Island Retro Gaming Podcast. Yes, I am the new host of this podcast. So hopefully, you get used to hearing my voice and seeing my face because this is going to be a show that we do hopefully once a month with some of the brightest and best minds in retro gaming on Long Island and as far as we can go. And we have what he'll call himself the event coordinator or the expo coordinator, operations coordinator, because he likes to be modest when he comes to telling us his role for Long Island Retro Gaming. But we like to call him the big boss. That's Mr. Joel Albino. And Joel, I will say this, and I've said it a million times before: the convention that you work to run is amazing. You're great to us, all the folks that are on the team. It is a wonderful experience to work this convention when we can get it done. And it has been heartbreaking that we haven't been able to do it for the last few years. But I'm so excited to see what LI Retro has in store for all of the LI Retro fans and all the LI Retro maniacs out there about what's going to happen in the future, the few events that we have planned for this year. We already did a small event a few weeks ago, and it was a lovely, magical evening. And, first and foremost, I'd like to say to you, when you go and you create and you put this event out there, what are you thinking? What is the vibe that you're looking to get? I've been to a lot of conventions. I've been to Comic Cons. I've been to PAX East. I've been to PAX Unplugged. I've been to anime conventions, MagFest. Nothing quite feels like, to me, like the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo. There's a really great family style, positive atmosphere. So I would like to. Could you maybe extrapolate upon that? Like, what's the vibe you're looking to go for?
All right, well, first, I think you're being a little kind because I've been to Magfest and there's there's nothing like Magfest. But from from the beginning of this thing, myself and the other founders, we wanted to focus on accessibility, right? So in every hobby, there are, I guess, gatekeepers, for lack of a better word. There's someone being a jerk, and it's not just video games or any kind of nerdy based hobby. It's anything. It's cars. Um, and I can't even think of it. There's lots of hobbies out there, right? Scrapbooking, right? Um, so
Definitely.
I mean, the whole purpose was wanted anyone who comes in to just have the best time possible, whether they're a hardcore gamer or if they haven't picked up a controller in 30 years and they're bringing the family and they're kind of like, well, you know, maybe they even feel a little shy, like I haven't, I'm gonna die when I play Super Mario for the first 5 seconds, and the goal is to make people feel comfortable and give them experiences that they can come home. And I mean, my personal goal is I want people to leave right when they go home. I want them to sit back and be like, "Wow, that was really bleeping awesome. That was a great time."
I say that every time I leave the expo, even though it's a lot of work to work the expo and it's
we're all
exhausting.
we're all dead tired by the end
we're,
of it. Yeah.
we're all so tired by the end of that weekend, but you definitely always feel like I always just want to go home and just go back through all my retro stuff and play only old games for a little bit of time, just because the celebration of them at the expo is just so positive and just amazing. Like, you really can't. It's hard for me to put into words just how fun the expo is every single year. And yes, I obviously I put us in the same class as like a Magfest, and I know there's nothing like Magfest, but even still, there's still something about that. There's also something with the expo that I love, and I'm not sure if you've probably gone out of your way to do this, but I love that there's that element of education when it comes to the expo, because it's not just about playing the games. These games are not just they're not just games that you can play on old consoles. There's a history here. Video games, like any other artistic medium, really need to be celebrated in a way that is both fun and educational. Now, I sound like, some suburban parent who's trying to like force, like, I don't know,
History's cool, kids.
math, exactly, trying to force like math blasters on their kids. But I think that there is something educational about it, whether it's the Ring of History, the museum section, all the old computers that we have, and things like that. It's great for people to see where this stuff comes from. So where do you get that kind of mentality where like we want to make this obviously fun for anyone, but we want to also make it educational? Is that because it's in a museum? Or is
No, it's well, that'd be a great answer though. So funny thing about the evolution of the expo, like when we all started this thing out, I personally have never really been a convention guy. I haven't been to a lot of conventions. I used to own a gaming center in the 2000s, so I worked at Icon once or twice, and I went to PAX once or twice, and around like 2011 ish. But besides that, I really did not know conventions, right, and go to them. So when we started, this thing up, and it was very very small, humble beginnings. I kind of had no idea in my head, like, well, all of us really didn't, like, what does this look like, right? Like, what do we do? We had no idea what we were doing. I'm still probably would say that I still don't really know what I'm doing. But so like, as a couple years went by, and I really started thinking, it's like, well, what, I knew that we have a very, very special group, right? With all the members of our team. Our management team is, easily, I don't know, 10 or 15 members strong. And then we have all the the regular volunteers who help out. So like, what makes us special? Well, the knowledge, right, that's in this group, the expertise is freaking insane. I mean, our guys and gals know more things about games than I think I ever will, right? I mean, I'm always learning new stuff and hearing people like, I never knew that was even a thing, right? So I thought, how can we take that, right? Because like that is a huge strength, and we take it for granted because we're so deep in this. But the fact remains that a lot of people don't know about any of this stuff. Like I'll use like RGB modding, PVMs, and
yeah.
stuff like that, right? And even just the simple fact of upscaling retro consoles on HD TVs, because I'm sure most people listening to this, both people listening to this know, um, if you just take an N64 and plug it into an HD TV, you're going to have an awful experience, and not just because of visual quality, but because of input lag, right? It's not gonna feel right. Um, and then obviously they make all the upscalers, um, the retro tink, the OSSC, and all this stuff. And this is all stuff like, oh yeah, like we know that, we've known that for years. It's a thing. A lot of people don't, and especially in the retro gaming hobby, a lot of times you'll have people who played a lot of games as a kid, kind of got away from it, got older, whatever, lost the hobby, and then started coming back to it. And they have these great memories of, playing SNES on a CRT. And now they have this, 60-inch TV, and they get an SNES on Craigslist and they plug it in, and it just doesn't feel right. And they don't even know why. So um, that's one of the reasons why we started going into all of these kind of educational type things. And it's not just functional things like the upscaling. It's, you mentioned the Ring of History. So the Ring of History was an idea that we had a couple years ago, and that was kind of the real start of our discussions. How can we make this more than just throwing Mario, Sonic, and Zelda out in free play and calling it a day? And that those are fun, don't get me wrong, but let's really see what we can do something special. So we made a kind of, it's called the ring because it's around the second floor where we put it in the Cradle of Aviation. It's kind of like a half circle. It's around this like giant cement cylinder, so we call it a ring, right? But we set up a bunch of consoles in chronological order. We have these beautiful banners made that has artwork, manuals, anything kind of relevant to the console. Each decade actually has a theme for the banners. So the 70s ones have like a 70s vibe, 80s has like a neon. Yeah, it's really cool. Um,
It is.
yeah, and we got some kind of tidbits, informational cards, and we set everything up to play. So it's like a playable. I don't want to call it a museum because Mike, you and Brendan, you guys work in our actual retro gaming museum, but this is basically a huge museum exhibit that I think that we had about 30-ish, around 30-ish consoles, and we're looking to expand that by about 5 to 10 every year.
Yeah.
We're doing US only first, but eventually we'll probably expand out to include Japanese. But and it's just a great way to see like the evolution, right? To see
Yeah.
where we started with the Magnavox Odyssey and end up at PlayStation 3, and you're like, what?
Which actually hurts my back hearing that the PlayStation 3 is probably considered retro now, but we'll get past that. Every time I hear that, I've got like lower back pain, because it's
15
just
years,
like
man.
getting older.
15 years.
We geriatric millennials are getting older and older, but no, it's 15 years old now. So it,
Yep.
it is. And that's what I love about retro. I was actually going to ask you about that when we talk about it, because obviously Long Island Retro Gaming has that emphasis on retro. And some folks like to get really particular about what is retro, what isn't retro, how long does it take? And 15 years to me, I mean, what is classic rock? Classic rock is usually 20 years or so when they consider classic rock 20, 25 years. So 15 years, because video gaming moves so quickly and moves so quickly for the first 20 years or so, 30 years, 15 years does really sound about right. Games from 15 years ago look really different than they do now. So it's crazy that now we're getting into the high def generation.
I know.
With that, it's really nuts to see like, oh, Xbox 360 came out 16 years ago. Wow. Okay, I guess we're gonna be all right. But that's great, and the Ring of History is really cool to look at. I actually, from personal experience, I had a few younger cousins come, and I think one of my cousins was probably about 12 years old when he 12 or 13 when he had come to the expo, because I tell everyone to come, everyone in my family who's like moderately into video games. I'm like, please come to the expo. It's a great way to spend the weekend. And I had a cousin who wanted to play through the entire Ring of History, and he was playing through most of it, but then he had to leave because obviously other things have to get done in life. And he was so upset that he didn't get to play the whole ring. So this is something that people want to experience, like good games, like good art, like good music, like good film will stand the test of time. They'll last forever. And it's really great that we have groups like ourselves, like Long Island Retro Gaming, to pat ourselves on the back here, that are looking to actually preserve this stuff. That's, I think, one of the most important things of retro gaming for the industry. So how do you feel that retro gaming and preservation have really grown over the past, I don't know, 10 or so years? Because I feel like retro gaming was always kind of a thing, but it was within the last 10 years since we really understood that this is almost like a separate idea or a separate field.
Right. Well, I think I mean, I didn't see it coming. I've always obviously been like a retro gamer. Like I never really lost love of the hobby going through my teens, my 20s and 30s and now 40s. But everything is with this stuff is cyclical, all right? So like you had the guys who grew up with Howdy Doody in the 50s. Once they reached a certain age, probably around their 30s, where they had disposable income and a yearning for childhood, then I believe, I wasn't there, but I would venture to guess that a pretty decent collecting scene popped up around Howdy Doody and or the other things around that time. So with the explosion of video games in the 80s, with Nintendo leading the charge. I mean, with the Atari and Coleco and stuff too, but really, I was born in '80, so I was there for the Nintendo explosion, and I think that seemed like it would have been bigger than the Atari
Yeah,
stuff as far as
I think
impact,
I think so.
right? And then like the console wars with the Genesis and the SNES and everything, um, and with how many like every kid you knew had a Nintendo or a Super Nintendo or a Genesis, like
Very few
the
people had the Master System, but
yes, very few, unfortunately. But like there was so like everybody, it was everywhere, right? Video games were everywhere. Blockbuster Video. So it was only a matter of time that the same thing happens, because it happens with just about every age group. The difference, though, is the video games, right? Like the video games are alive, so somebody can go and play through and have their own experience. Like, yes, they can watch an old TV show of like Howdy Doody. A lot of it's just the product, I think, of the time, and and all your friends are watching it and everything. Video games, I think, have a little more of a personal connection. So you can be born in 2005, but you can go back and play Final Fantasy 6, and you can have that experience and that relationship with it. So I think for the first time in like our nostalgia cycle, things are, video games, I think, make it a little bit different, add a little bit of spice to the mixture.
No, I totally agree. And I think because it is an active medium that you're actively engaging with, I think there are bonds that form because of that that are closer and more intense. So you're really hitting the nail on the head. I can watch a movie that I watched in my childhood and have a nostalgic experience with it and have that nostalgic connection, but nothing feels like me sitting down and playing something like Super Mario World. Nothing feels like me sitting down and playing something like Mega Man X. I experienced the NES. I was born in 86. I got my NES in 88. I played NES like crazy from 88 on to 90, 91. I got a Super Nintendo. I had all my old stuff. So I'm like in between those generations. The Super Nintendo is really where it solidified my love and interest in video games. And I had a Genesis too, but that was like the weekend console that I played when I wasn't doing my 9 to 5 job, which was Super Nintendo. And when you go, there's a connection there because video games, it's obviously the art, it's the music, it's the gameplay, it's that connection you make with stuff. But I feel like before the last console generation, and when I say last console generation, I mean PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and a little bit of maybe Wii U, even though Nintendo's all over the place with console generations these days. I feel like before that, retro wasn't really a thing in terms of like the importance. People didn't invest in making games that were retro. There were very few ports and updates and HD remasters and things like that. So when you go and you look at the next generation and the proliferation of the online storefront, which has its own issues, obviously, I think that's the point where, like you were saying, like people who were grew up watching Howdy Doody in the 50s when they were kids, 30 years later, they're in their 30s and they want to buy Howdy Doody merch. It seems like the kids that were young when the NES and the SNES were blowing up, when they started to get to make games themselves, they made the games that were like the games they played growing up. So retro not only blew up in the last 10 years because people looked back and said, no, there's value to these games. There's value in this. There's history here. There's lessons to be learned. This is art that we need to preserve and maintain and retain. But on top of that, they design games that are based on that. So when you go and play something like Shovel Knight and then you look like, oh, this is inspired by Mario 3 and DuckTales and Mega Man and Castlevania, it's like picking up a record from a band from the 90s who quotes all their favorite bands from the 70s and then you go and listen to those bands. So that's kind of how video gaming kind of works.
Yeah.
And there is that personal connection there. So I really get what you're talking about. And do you feel where do you feel that retro gaming, right? Because I don't think retro gaming is just always necessarily tied to age anymore. I feel like it's almost a genre in and of itself. But where do you feel retro gaming is going to go in the future? And where do you feel that LI Retro is going to go, along with the continuation, the proliferation of retro gaming?
Oof, that's a lot of questions.
Sorry.
Nah,
You asked me to give interviews. I'm trying my hardest here.
all right. So where does the retro gaming go? I have no idea. It could either go one or two ways. It can keep growing, right? Or it could peter out because because I mean, there are frustrations with it. Like if people are trying to collect complete sets, I mean, pricing has been going through the roof.
Yeah.
If you want like a nice PVM monitor, I mean, those are blowing up in price too. So I mean, I could see some people getting frustrated, but the nice thing is that it's relatively easy to get a cheap, decent CRT TV,
Of
right,
course.
and a console, and have like a nice, a nice experience. And it's pretty easy to do it on HD TV as well with the like the classic systems and the cheap upscalers. But I mean, I guess my ultimate answer is I have no idea. I'm just here for the ride, man.
That, you know what though, that's the way to be. Trying to read the tea leaves, or consult your crystal ball when it comes to retro is not easy, because I don't think we could have seen this coming.
No, I
When
mean,
when
what I like, my number one thing like that I've tried to that's guided me through like all these years and everything is that I just try to have fun,
That's yeah.
and like what's gonna be fun, what's gonna. I mean, obviously you got to make make sure like things are running. You got to make sure like it's not always fun, but that's like the the guiding light or the north star, which I always try to follow. It's like, is this fun or what's fun, or and if it's not fun, I don't know, like why do it?
I Joel, that's exactly how I feel just about everything I do. If we're not having a good time, then why the hell are we doing it?
Yeah, why are you doing it?
Exactly. So this is one of those things where I totally get that. I hope that retro gaming in general, and the style and indie games and things like that, continue to carry that torch for the games that we loved growing up and the games that we've continued to love as adults. I do see retro gaming continuing to. I think we're going to get a little bit more now moving forward with indie developers and things like that. Probably more stuff that we would see in like the N64 or the PlayStation generation, more of that 32-bit, 64-bit era stuff, because those kids of that era are now probably getting close to their 30s, and they're starting to make games. So it's really special to see that. And yeah, it is an issue, right? With the whole collector's market's weird, because it's like, yes, I want to preserve all these carts, but I also want to preserve the ROMs, because if the carts go bad, we need to keep this. Like, we need almost like a library, right? We almost need like a gaming library where we can get access to these things to
Well,
play them.
some people are, a lot of people are heavily involved in preservation efforts, like Frank and the Video
Yeah.
Game History Foundation.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, I mean the stuff they do is absolutely insane, and like, you always see stories like I saw something recently that Modern Vintage Gamer put out where he assisted someone in dumping like a Genesis prototype, which was which is cool. So there's always feel good stories like that. That is multiple people coming together to in the name of preservation. Yeah, I mean, as far as like the cartridges thing go, me personally, like the only thing I really like, get that kind of like gets my goat, not gets my goat, but gets me going a little bit. I like is I still like love boxed NES games. They kind
Yeah.
of give me that little like you get that little like ooh, right? Um, but I don't know, like I'm very much like an EverDrive, like don't really need the physical media type of guy
Yeah.
because I like
Hmm.
to focus on the games.
I
But
get that.
yeah, I mean, but like everyone's different, and I've definitely been to people's houses where they have the wall of games, and it's pretty cool. I
Yeah,
guess
no, it's impressive.
I just funnel any ideas or or wants I have from that aspect and just put it into the expo, because if it's in the expo, then everybody gets to check it out, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's like you have the house that has all the games, and everyone's coming over to play
Right,
games
right,
all the
exactly.
time. So that's always the fun. It brings so many people together. Like you said before, non-gamers, people who've been lapsed gamers, people who are new to the genre, new to the medium. It's amazing. We did the Arcade After Dark event a few weeks ago, and I invited a handful of people that don't normally really play video games, but they came to the convention, and they not the convention, they came to the event, and they saw all the machines, and it was just a fun night out. Even my wife, who's like not a video gamer at all, was just like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. She was playing Centipede, she was playing Galaga, and now I probably have to buy a Centipede machine, but that's another story for another time.
Well, you
But
you also, like, before, when we talked about the Ring of History and we talked
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
giving giving an experience. Another thing that we're really trying to focus on, and this is something we really started after the last expo we were able to do, so no one's really we haven't been able to put the stuff out yet, is when we started asking ourselves those questions, like what what makes us different, or how can we make things special. Another one of the ideas was, let's give people experiences that they can't easily get at home, right? So what does that mean? It can mean a billion different things. I mean, the museum is really one of those, right? Because you
yeah.
can't go and see like all these rare consoles, but we've been starting to really dip our toes into like some weird system link stuff. Like we purchased a bunch of Dreamcast link cables, which isn't compatible with a lot of games, but there's a few and there's some fun ones. Uh, Saturn link cable, maybe, I don't know. We also we're going to, this is happening next show. We're going to system link two Virtual Boys together, and there's a custom port or something of Street Fighter for the Virtual Boy. So we're gonna have two Virtual Boys system linked, and we're gonna have a virtual tap on one of them to, display it out so people can watch. And it's just one of those wacky, like holy moly, look,
It's
this is
that's
insane.
nuts. That's amazing.
Like two what's the name of that Xbox Steel Battalion? We
Steel
like two
Battalion.
still two Steel Battalions, linked up. Like that's not something you see all the time. So we're trying to focus on some more like fun stuff. Maybe like I think there's a TurboGrafx version of Bomberman that could have like 8 players or something. So I think we're gonna try to get that going. So just
Very
stuff
cool.
like that, just stuff that you may know about, you may hear about, even with games that you may be very familiar with, but presented in a different and fun way. Like uh, network game cubes, which is something we've been doing for a bunch of years, is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Like linking up 8 game cubes to play Double Dash, that's pretty cool.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's how Double Dash really, should be played. And they took them forever to get to a spot where you could play Mario Kart with, more than 4 people. So it's really special that you have that. And these experiences that, they're worth the price of admission alone, let alone all the stuff that we have in like the arcade section or the museum section, playing like Brendan's X68000 computer, which is like a rarity in and of itself. That in itself is a history lesson and a brilliant museum piece. But when you see people playing stuff on the 64DD, which you don't necessarily get to see out in the wild all that much, a lot of people have an NES, a lot of people have a Super Nintendo or a Genesis or all that, and we have that for those who don't. And some people, all they want to do is they just want to come to the expo, they want to sit down, they want to play Sonic 2 and they want to play Mario 3. And you know what? That's a beautiful thing and that's fine. But for people who want to do something that's a little bit off the beaten path, you can play a 2-player Steel Battalion. You can play, an 8-player Mario Kart. You can play that amazing CPS2 setup that we had at Arcade After Dark with the 2 TVs and all that and the arcade machines. So that's really special stuff. And that Virtual Boy link up sounds so cool. Not only will you lose in Street Fighter, but you'll also have a whomping headache to go along with it. So that's pretty good. But it also puts some pressure on the winner, because if the winner stays, the winner's got to keep their head in that Virtual Boy for
Oh, that's
longer. So
that's like a degradation right
yeah,
there.
exactly. It's like you're slowly getting worse because unless you're good under pain. I don't know, but it's like
If
it's what
anyone's wondering what Mike's talking about too, about the CPS2, so one of the guys in our team, Chris, is a huge fighting game enthu- enthusiast.
enthusiast.
Enthusiast, thank you. And so he has a CPS2 multi board, so he hooked that up to a super gun, which allows you to basically consoleize arcade systems.
We have a video on
So
that coming up soon.
we do. And side note, one of the great things about when we talk about preservation, education, everything is we've been having some pretty decent success with YouTube, so we're starting to make videos about like the cool stuff that we have, so people can learn about it, right? So we did one on the super gun. So he has this CPS2 board hooked up to a super gun. The super gun is outputting to 2 different CRTs. So and there's an arcade stick on each end. So 2 people are playing head to head in a fighting game with their own CRT on arcade hardware, and then separately there's an HDMI cable coming out on a large display so people could just watch.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool.
It's amazing to watch, and of course, it's right next to the Astro City Candy Cab. That's also there in the room. So it's like for me as like a fighting game nerd who's not very good at them, I just love them. It's like oh my gosh, it's like you're almost brought to like a very special place, because the arcade in the States, at least in our area in the States, is just not as prolific as it once was, and it's very very hard to find a true arcade experience these days. But our expo does it. Our expo can give it to you. whether you're doing something with the CPS2 boards or you're playing one of the cabinets that we have in the expo. It's really nice to see that, and really nice to see all these folks that come together and find the weirdest stuff to talk about. Whether it's like you said, the super gun, which is something that ever since I saw it, I'm like, am I going to shell out money to get this super gun? Because it definitely seems like something that is really special. Even if I have access to an arcade cabinet or a few, it's something that just this stuff you don't always hear about, and that's really the originality of experience that you get at the Retro Expo. So I really appreciate that. And I know every year you want to make it bigger, you want to make it better, you want to do more, you want to open it up to more days. And the Cradle of Aviation, I have to say, I would be remiss to not say that they just do an amazing job with us as well. It's great working with them.
Oh, they're
Uh,
fantastic.
they're fantastic to they've been a great partner. Working with Seamus is always great. Seamus at the Cradle, who really like fights to make sure the exhibits are as good as they possibly can be, and it's just a lovely time and a lovely weekend. And anyone who hasn't been to one of the events, even if you just go to like, if you listen, go to the expo if you can, but if you can't go to the expo, if you're not in town or something like that, definitely check out any of the other arcade based events that the Cradle does, that Long Island Retro Gaming is pretty much always involved in them. Just check them out because it's such a cool place. It's also cool that like you have this exhibit and this expo in the middle of a very interesting air and space museum. Did that like, when you guys were like getting together and you're like, hey, we're going to do a convention. First of all, I don't know how the heck you do that. I don't know how the heck you sit down and go, we're doing a convention, guys.
Do
You got a lot of I don't know if nerves the right word, but definitely a lot of confidence in your abilities. So we have to celebrate that.
Well, there was no confidence. I'll tell you how it started. I'll answer one more past question before I move on to this.
Sorry.
So
I'm
no, no.
I'm rapid firing.
So when you said where do I see the future?
Yes.
I don't really know, but I would love to not only for the expo, continue to grow, but to find a permanent home for us slash our all of our stuff, right? Because it sits in storage
Yeah.
for most of the year, right? Whether that's like an arcade or a little like museum or I don't know, but I would love to find a more permanent home, and not just have stuff on shelves. But all right, so how did the expo start? Long ago, eons ago, in the year of 2015, um, I joined a Facebook group called Long Island Retro Gaming, right? And I messaged one of the admins. I had just moved, and I found this group. This is great. I'm like, wow, other people like retro games. This is fantastic. And I wanted to like, I thought maybe a meetup in a bar or something would be a great idea. Have a beer, play some games, meet some people who like the same stuff. So I messaged a guy, one of the admins of the group, and he's like, "Yeah, sounds like a great idea. I've thought about it. Do you want to help?" And I said, "I'd love to help." He's like, "All right, I got another guy who wants to help too." So we met up in a Burger King in, geez, this had to be March or April of 2015.
Wow.
And somehow, and I don't exactly know how, that turned into us doing an expo. Now, we say expo now, we think of, say the last show we did in 2019, and this big hulking thing, and, beautiful museum and lots of people and everything. So we had this one really tiny room in it was in the Upsky Hotel. It was in Hopog in Long Island. And, we got the room, and then we just started, like, look, none of us had any idea what we were doing. And like I said, I wasn't really a convention guy. I don't really think they were either. Um, so we just like, I don't know, we talked to the local video game stores. We made up little flyers. We, got a couple of people coming as vendors. We got a couple of, we actually had a museum. It was these three glass cases. Yeah, it's pretty cool, like, for considering it was the first year. Um, and we figured we'd get about, yeah, maybe 200 people, 300 people. So we're there on the morning. I think it was it a, had to be, yeah, it was a one day. And someone comes up to me and says, the lines outside, like down the whole parking lot of the hotel. I'm like, no freaking way. So I look out, and like, sure enough, right? It's it's down. I mean, you can't even see the end of it. So I'm like, holy heck! Now, like, we didn't have a ticketing system. You know, we just did PayPal. So my fiance and Ryan's wife Randy, like they were doing like the wristbands. I remember we sent them out, and it was, I think, 4 hours later, and I just realized, oh my god, I haven't seen Denise, and like, where the hell is she? Is she okay? And then she was still going through, because the checking through names on printouts, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
the most cumbersome. We ended up we hit some fire code limitations for a while. I mean, it was so, like, you
Wow.
literally could not walk in this room.
Wow.
Um, and I think we ended up with around 800 people, which was way too, way too much for that room. Uh,
That's
so
amazing.
it was just like, I mean, from open till the end, it was just like us just trying to keep up. Like, at one time we ran out of wristbands, and it was cool because like everyone we knew showed up,
Hmm.
even though like they weren't gamers. So like, one of my friends who was there ran out and found wristbands somewhere from a store. I don't even know where she got them. Uh, so it's just like trying to keep up and make it through, and and addressing any problems, issues, whatever. But it was also, a great time. And at the end of it, we obviously said, hey, like, we should do this again. So we did at the same hotel the following year, 2016. We made a bunch of additions. We obviously got as much space as the hotel had to allow. We had a bigger vendor room. We had panels for the first time. Um, I think we added PCs for the first time, and none of this was like, there's probably maybe 8 PCs or something, but it was, an addition. Um, and yeah, that went well. And then, we then, by that point, we were feeling, like, I'm not really feeling the hotel that much. Like, they weren't really super easy to work with, and the space was like kind of disjointed. There's multiple entrances, and it was hard to manage. So we didn't really know what to do. We started looking around at, I think we looked at Hofstra and Delphi University, and talked to those people to see what kind of space they had. And right around this time, we got an invitation from a dude we had never met. His name was Seamus. Now I call him my shame. Um, and he was opening up an arcade exhibit in the Cradle of Aviation Museum, and he was having like a, I don't know what they call it, like a preview night or a
Yeah.
opening, invite, right? So, you know, like, hell yeah. So we went. The exhibit was absolutely extraordinary, beautifully, wonderfully done. We met Seamus, and the conversations naturally led to, I mean, I don't know like how it came up, but moving the expo to the Cradle of Aviation. And that's where it's been ever since. So 2017, 18, 19, obviously 20 and 21 are a bust. But to the team's credit, we haven't been kind of languishing on our laurels. We've been working on the YouTube channel. We've been uh, George, who's our chief preservationist, has been excuse me, just going crazy, like fixing up arcades, and we've been getting some good stuff done, and it'll just all equal out to being able to put on a better show next year.
That's right. So everyone listening right now who thinks that we might be slacking off in the time off from from, unfortunately, from the pandemic and not being able to do the conventions for the last few years, 2022 is going to be such an amazing time. It's going to be an amazing expo. I've seen some of this stuff that George is working on. I've seen some of the stuff that the group is working on, and oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Also, I feel like George, our chief preservation officer George, finds the weirdest, rarest, craziest stuff. But
Oh yeah, it's insane.
the number one reason, or the number one, like, yeah, his, if you got to be in it to win it, like, he's looking for stuff and he finds it, and it's just like the other
He
day he posted on the internet. It's like, oh yeah, I found a Marvel versus Capcom machine. I can fix it. I got it for $300, and it's
Yep,
just like,
and
all right.
he got fried chicken with it.
Well,
Um,
I mean, yes, of course.
he's the only guy who I've ever met who I think moves like as much and probably more than I do. As far as like, he just doesn't stop. I'm probably got
No.
to like stick him with a horse tranquilizer at some point just so we can get some sleep.
I bet you
But
like there's probably 1 week a year where he just shuts down.
yeah,
It's like a
probably.
hibernation week, he's just like, "All right, I need to go to bed," and then on down and up.
For me, that's the week after the expo. I
Oh,
just
yeah.
power down, Um, yeah, so I mean, obviously the Cradle's been a great home for the
Mhm.
expo.
Mhm.
They're wonderful to work with. Seamus
Amazing.
is obviously a huge retro gaming fan, having made an arcade exhibit, right? I mean, you got to be. And me, myself in the museum, and especially myself and Seamus have really cultivated a really great friendship and relationship over the years. And now, I mean, I would really call him like one of my very, very dear friends.
Yeah, great guy.
It's fantastic. I mean, like I said, I don't know a lot about other shows. I don't know how, like, there's always problems, right? You're always gonna have problems, and uh, there's a natural chaotic factor that happens in any event or convention or expo, whatever you want to call it. Um, you take as many steps as you can in advance to mitigate the chaos factor, but you also have to open yourself up. It's gonna happen, right?
Yep. So, there will be things that go wrong at a convention, but when you have a good team and a good fearless leader like yourself, you can get that stuff done because you as a leader and a manager and and a coordinator do a really good job at making us feel that we're trusted. Like we feel like we're part of the team. It doesn't feel like, we're where we don't have any significance. Like it's great to see someone to work with someone who will listen to what we have to say. We'll try out ideas. We'll do what you said before. Whatever's fun. If it's fun, let's do it. If it's fun and we can make it work and it's organized, let's do it. And we've tried a lot of stuff, and I think that's how we've gotten a lot of new ideas, and that's how the expo has really improved year after year after year. And we have to give all the thanks to the Cradle of Aviation for just giving us an amazing venue to have a convention in. It's such a cool spot. There's nothing quite like looking over like the second floor down into like the vendor area as people just like more just keep on coming in all day as the line stretches down the block. So it's a little chaotic, right? It's a little nuts, but in the good way, in the best controlled chaos possible. And it's really just a brilliant time. And it's only going to get better and hopefully longer. But, so um, you have answered with you've answered all of my questions that I had, all of the big ones. You hit me with everything. I got the history of the convention. I got what you like about retro gaming, where you're coming from with all this stuff, where you expect the expo to go in the future. But I have a few questions that I want to really ask, like everyone who comes on, just because this is retro gaming. It is about an expo. It is about a lovely group of people. But in the end, what is it about? It's about the games. So, first question, favorite game of all time?
I can't answer that, man. Come
You can't?
on. I
If you had to pick one game out today to play, what would you pick
I
out
mean,
first?
like one of my favorite games to just pick up and like just screw around in is Balloon Fight.
All right.
Um, I love Zelda One. And actually, if you look, my head's probably in the way, but if you look behind me, you
Oh
can
yeah.
probably see I got that's the U.S. Zelda One, the Famicom cartridge, the Famicom Disk System, and then Zelda Two. I don't know why I have Zelda Two up there, but it's I love it. I also love Tetris. like, uh,
It's not a bad pick, man. Tetris
no,
is
like,
lovely.
and a lot of puzzle games too. I find
Mhm.
myself like, spending a lot of time in Tetris 99, or I love playing Tetris Attack.
Yeah.
So, stuff like that.
Yeah, those are great. I love Tetris 99. I think Tetris 99 is just amazing. It
Oh
actually
yeah,
got
it's
me into Tetris. Funny
really.
enough, I hadn't really played much Tetris before. I had a Game Boy. I didn't know what I was doing on Tetris like ever. I didn't realize I didn't put Tetra and 4 together like an idiot. So I had it explained to me once on how to play it when Tetris 99 came out, and then I got hooked on 99, and now I'm like a Tetris fan. So it's such a good experience. It's such a great game, and it's timeless. It's no wonder why it's sold so well over the years, and they have such a great thing going. Do you have a favorite video game console of all time?
killing me with these.
I'm sorry I'm killing you, but
I want to give an honorable mention game wise to Breath of the Wild because
of
that
course.
that knocked me off my seat. When it came out. Um, Favorite console. Here's the thing about them. I mean, I'd probably stick with like you know NES or Super Nintendo, but if I like really had to push it, but there is the beauty about all of them is that like they all have like their wonderful flourishes, right? Like a
Yeah.
Genesis game, like an awesome Genesis game, is so different, right? Than other systems, and the same thing with like TurboGrafx, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the same thing with like the GameCube has this like first the GameCube graphics are awesome,
They are great. They are
but
great.
like they have this wonderful, yeah, it's just everything has its place, which is the even Game Boy. Like Game Boy is so simple, right? You
Yeah.
have such little to work with, and the beauty of it is what the developers did with those limitations. And
Yeah, totally.
creativity thrives in limitation. But
We've learned that, right? We've learned that how games with those limitations, and when they're on, when they're dealing with limited hardware, they really come up with some great stuff. And
yeah,
like you're talking about the Game Boy's sound driver is excellent. Game Boy music sounds so good with that stereo output. So you know what? I'm kind of like you. I don't really like to pick and choose favorites. I'm not a, Genesis does what Nintendo don't. I'm not one of those people. I don't really get too into the whole console war. I also love the GameCube. So you got a lot of great picks flying around right there, and it's one of those things where it's just like there's greatness on all of these consoles. Very few of them are bad in the end, or very few of them are wholly bad
mhm.
in the end. There's always a handful of amazing experiences on everything, and different types of gamers on different types of series and consoles and genres. Now, do you have like a favorite? Do you have like? I'm not going to ask you for a singled out question, but do you have like genres that you will gravitate towards? Or are you like a everything bagel type of guy?
No, I definitely have genres I gravitate towards. So here's the. I mean, this is going to sound a little cringy, but I mean, it's the truth. Like before, when you say things like, "Oh, fearless leader" and everything, like that stuff makes me so uncomfortable.
I'm
And
sorry.
there, no, it's okay. I mean, part of this role that I fell into all these years is going outside of my comfort zone. But I mean, I like at my heart, I'm a basement dwelling nerd, right? Who's I love being social, but I'm probably naturally introverted. Um,
Which is
and
okay.
yeah, I mean, and like I'm just a little nerd. So like when we talk about the team and everything, like the success of LA Retro and everything is the team. Like
Yeah.
yeah, like I'm sometimes I'm trying to like push the wagon over the river or giving people what they need. But I mean, at the end of the day, like I can't really take credit for anything. It's the people that we have are just absolutely out of this world. So circling back to basement dwelling nerd. So going back to basement dwelling nerd. So what do you know? I only lived in a basement for like 5 years, to be fair, but um, I love RPGs.
Yeah, me too.
Um, I love, like I mentioned, puzzle games, and I
Hmm.
really started to get into some like I'm gonna call them. I don't really know what to call them. Light strategy games,
Okay.
like Mario Rabbids.
Oh,
I
great
had
game.
such a great time with
Great
that game.
game. Great game.
I got into the Breach.
Very
Like
good game.
yeah. Also, I also love like I wouldn't say this is Metroidvanias.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are always fun. Like Axiom Verge absolutely blew me away. Like I own physical copies of very very few games, and yeah, and I have a copy of that game. It was
It's
just
so good.
the fact that one dude just did like everything. I couldn't.
Very impressive.
I would say that's my that's my main like I go a little bit for like the Assassin's Creed type game. Like I've been
Okay.
playing through Spider-Man for PS4,
Yeah, it's a
and
good time.
yeah, so it's it has a lot of similarity. Like I haven't played an Assassin's Creed game in a long time, but has a lot of similarities where you gotta
Hmm.
like get the towers and I wouldn't say I'd want to do that all the time, but and action RPGs like the E series,
Yeah, they're great too.
yeah, super
I
good
really
too.
I really like the I played East 8 quite a bit. I enjoyed that a lot, and I thought that was a really good time. As you're getting into strategy games, have you taken a look? Have you played Final Fantasy Tactics?
I haven't. I know it's a big
Because I am a pusher, my friend.
yeah, no, I know. Dude, you and everybody else I've ever met in my life. I know that that's a big hole, especially because I've played, most, if not all, but most Final Fantasy games. But George, who we mentioned before, helped me out with, I call it my PS1 Mercedes. It has a PS1 digital and an X station.
Oh, very
So
nice.
I am, um, I am like, it's on the list. It's definitely on the list. I know I got to do it.
I'm gonna burst the bubble just a little bit because I grew up on the PS1 version. The PSP version is
PSP,
actually a
yeah,
little
I've heard that.
better, but
Well,
I
luckily, right next to the PS1 is a PS Vita TV, which I can run the PSP version on.
well, then you just got to get War of the Lions because if you're getting into strategy games and you're really liking those like light strategy RPGs, Final Fantasy Tactics is kind of a must play. And for me, I'm a big fan of those games. I love Tactics Ogre, Final Fantasy Tactics, Mario plus Rabbids, Fire Emblem. Those are all just really good time. Advanced Wars, all that stuff is really good. So it's nice to see that you're venturing into it, and that's kind of it, right? Some people think we retro fans never grow, but we do. We do. We try new things. We just really like old stuff too, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, Joel, I'm ready to wrap this up for you. I don't think I have any other questions to ask you at this point in time. I appreciate everything that you do with us. I think that we put on an amazing show. I thank you for your time today. Is there anything else you want to tell the Long Island Retro community before we sign off here?
Uh, well, first, I'd like to thank you for taking over this podcast because, some wacko was having trouble doing it regularly. That's me. So here's the torch. I'm passing the torch to you.
Oh, well, the
Uh,
torch was passed, but on my end, it's a can of seltzer, so it'll be all
okay.
right.
Hey, that's cool. What if it works? Um, no, I mean, if for the immediate people in Long Island, I'd personally like to thank everyone because the expo really grew out of the Facebook group, and
Hmm.
that's where a lot of our people came from. So I would like to thank if all those people didn't show up the first year, like who knows what would have happened. So
Yeah,
I would like to really, really thank everyone for all of the support over the years and
very
for
cool.
coming out and for being enthusiastic and for people in the wider area who may have learned of us recently or even a couple years ago and maybe started watching through YouTube or maybe started some people are starting to travel from far away to the show, which is really blows my mind.
It's amazing.
I like to thank you guys as well. I like to thank all uh, retro gamers, whether you're a hardcore or a extremely casual, or if you don't even know you're a retro gamer. If you pick up Mario 3 and just have fun, you're a retro gamer.
Exactly. I
Uh,
agree. I agree.
and I like to thank everyone for just their support and coming out and for their enthusiasm. And anyone who just wants to have fun.
I That's awesome.
I
Well,
mean, the main reason I'm a big Disney guy, and you hear that and you think the first thing that comes to mind is Disney like lunatic. I'm not a Disney lunatic. I actually worked in Disney World in my early 20s as part of the college program, and I was not a Disney fan when I went in. I became a Disney fan after I learned how the parks worked and how they did everything. It was super impressive.
yeah.
You can almost say I'm like a logistical fan because it was just but their focus was on fun. So that's how I think of the expo, right? The expo is our chance, right? Mine, yours, everyone on our team to make our own Disney World,
Yeah.
our own place where hey, sky's the limit, man. Anything you got an idea? Let's do it.
I love that.
That's where a lot of our great ideas come from. A lot of people are like, they may join and they may want to be quiet during our discussions or our meetings and everything, but it's important to let people feel comfortable, because they can come up with a idea that they're like, oh, this, they'll never go for this. This sounds insane. But yeah, it does sound insane. Let's try to do it, because
Let's do it.
it's the best ideas, are the ones that sound crazy.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And sometimes you just need to trim a crazy idea down just a little bit to get it to where it fits in that spot. I'm so happy you brought up Disney, because I was going to bring it up, but I wasn't sure if it was something that I should bring up, because there is an Epcot feel to the convention. There's
Oh, that
something
makes me
about it.
so happy.
There's such an Epcot feel to the expo. There's like, outside of like extra food booths and stuff, it feels like something out of like the food and wine celebration, where it's just like this thing where it's just like there's so much to do, and I'm learning but having fun and talking about stuff that I love. And you're just like you're like a turkey leg and a churro away from having a day at a video game version of like a Disney park, or like a video game version of Epcot, back when Epcot used to have video games at some point.
Yeah,
So it's
80s Epcot is like my favorite. If I could live in a place.
and the aesthetic kind of comes through too in
Yeah.
a lot of our branding. You kind of get that same aesthetic. Not a bad thing. I love it. I think it's amazing, because I also am I'm a big Disney fan. So especially of the parks, I'm a huge fan of that. So that's awesome. Joel, thank you so much for your stories. Thank you for your input. Thank you for answering my stupid questions when I'm asking you what your favorite
No,
game
they're
is.
good
Very
questions.
difficult questions to answer. But thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us today. And we're going to do more. We're going to do more of these every single month. So everyone out there, please subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment, subscribe to us on the podcatcher of your choosing. Once we start putting the audio versions of these out, leave us comments. All that stuff helps the overall visibility of what we're trying to do here at LI Retro Gaming. And keep an eye on our socials. You can find us at LI Retro pretty much across a lot of the board there, or you could just search out LI Retro, Long Island Retro Gaming, and you can find all that stuff just to get news on when we're going to be doing events, where we're going to be doing events, and when the expo will be coming back in its fullest form. So, Joel, thank you so much once again. And we appreciate everything you do. And it's nice to hear that there's just such a good family style atmosphere among the LI Retro crowd. And it's an amazing thing to be a part of. So, thank you again. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy.